how to roll over a 401k retirement plan to an IRA. So, what a lot of people don't understand is when you're in a 401k retirement plan, that is an accumulation product. It's a vehicle where you can accumulate cash, and eventually you're going to have to move that over into a distribution product if you want to draw income off of it, or once you separate employment and you go to retire, or you get close to retirement, you really want to start thinking about rolling this 401k over. And we sit with a lot of people that have old 401ks that really don't know how fees work with 401ks, how if they're not contributing, how does the growth work with the 401k? And if you're in that position where you've got an old 401k and you need to roll it over, you need advice on how to roll it over, like reach out to us at Financial Thirst. We're here to help you. But we want to make sure that you understand the process of rolling over a 401k into an IRA or another distribution vehicle. So Ryan, walk them through what the process would look like. When would they want to start looking at rolling over a 401k? How early in life can they look at? And when we talk at Financial Thirst about rolling over a 401k, you got to understand, like, our whole philosophy is to create safety for our clients. It's to put you in a safe environment where you're no longer at risk. Like, you've done a great job, you've accumulated all this cash for retirement. Now, how do you keep it? Because the number one question that we ask people is, how much can you afford to lose? Right? So there is an age, or I would say a year, if you're expected to retire at 65, there's an age in a year where you want to start thinking about rolling over into a safer product that your entire retirement isn't up in the air. We saw this in 2008. Ron, I know you saw it because you were in this business back in 2008. But we saw in 2008, I watched people's retirement get decimated by the housing collapse. And they ended up having to work another 4, 5, or 6 years just to make it up after losing a good portion of their retirement. So go through the rollover process with them. Let them know when they should start thinking about rolling over a 401k. If they have an old 401k, why they would want to roll it over. And then we can go through the process with them on how they roll that over.
Well, first, let's talk through when something like this would arrive, meaning when is the opportunity there for you to think about rolling money over like a 401k. So it's either you've changed jobs, so you've changed employers, or you're no longer working at the employer you were. So that could mean you've lost your job, or you've changed jobs and you've gone to a different employer. When that occurs, you have a couple of choices. You can either cash it out, and if you cash it out, you're going to pay all the tax on that. So that's option number one, is you cash it out. Option two is you move it, potentially if you've changed jobs, into the new company's 401k plan. So that's basically just transferring the money from one plan to another, employer to employer. So that's an option that you can do also. Another option is you simply move it into an IRA. So you can take kind of some control and move it into your own IRA. That's something to consider also. You can also just leave it, which is a lot of people kind of do this. They change jobs and they almost forget that they had a 401k at that position, and it just stays there. Now, there's no contributions going into it because you're no longer employed there. But a lot of people, that's what happens. They kind of forget that they were doing that. They've set up their new 401k and they have their old 401k just sitting there. The other point is that when I said you can move it into an IRA type platform, you can kind of take control of the money yourself and put it into your own plan. So that's definitely an option to do that. I definitely wouldn't cash it out. I know, Will, you had mentioned that your father had a situation where he lost his position after 20 years and needed the money, so he had to cash it out. Well, he had to pay all of his tax on that for that to happen. He lost a good chunk of that money in order to do that. That's not something that we would ever advise you to do unless it's just extreme circumstances. So that's really the situation there. You want to avoid that at all costs if you could. So really, it's really moving the money into a new 401k with your new employer, or moving it into a traditional IRA type platform that you control and you take advantage of. And that's something that we would definitely talk about and try to put something together that would maybe, to your point, Will, that you mentioned, having some safety, trying to control from loss. We want to look at some things like that. So I think, Will, what we should probably do here is get you to kind of explain the process of rolling something over for someone that might have an old 401k or old IRA that they want to move. Let's step them through and walk them through that particular process, because you could probably do this on your own. Not saying that you can't, because it's something that's relatively easy to do if you get the paperwork and get that done. And you might hear people say, well, you got to pay someone to do that. At Financial Thirst, we're not charging people to do these types of things in terms of rolling over, but we can help guide you and set things up for you, and making sure things are handled in the right way and keep on top of things, because you just never know what's happening with these particular rollovers of how money's being handled. So let's walk through step by step kind of what you do and through a rollover process, because we really do. I don't want to use the term hand-holding, but we really help people walk through these steps to make sure we're dotting I's and crossing T's. Nothing's missed, to where they're making sure their money's going where they want it to go. So why don't you step through, because you've done some here recently as well, of when you're meeting with a client or a couple or whatever's happening, how are you handling these things, and what are you walking through to make sure these things are completed?
Yeah, so to your point, I mean, anybody can do it on their own, but when you have a professional, it's a lot easier to understand. And we've moved into what we call a Google society nowadays, where instead of going to the doctor to get a proper diagnosis on your situation, everybody Googles it first. And then when they don't understand what they're looking at, or they're getting contradictory information based upon their physical health, then that's when they decide, okay, I'm going to go into the doctor. So, I mean, anybody can do it on their own. You can look up how it works. You can look at a company that will help you move it, or you can get with someone like us at Financial Thirst, where we actually consult with you and we walk you through the plan, and then we handle the process for you. So the number one thing to keep in mind when you're going to move any money in a rollover per se, or you're going to roll over your 401k, is the number one thing that we ask first is, what's the long-term goal for that money? Meaning, do you plan on taking income immediately? Do you plan on letting it grow for 4 or 5 years and then drawing income? Is it a 10-year income plan? Or do you plan on taking income at all? Because a lot of people, when they retire, their Social Security, their pension, if they've done things properly, they're in a position where they don't need the money and they don't have any plans on using the money. So it could be a long-term play that you're rolling it into more of a legacy vehicle, where you're going to leave that money for your beneficiaries, where they're going to get it when you pass away. So number one, we have to identify what the purpose is for the money before we would ever move it for you, because there's so many different vehicles that you can position the money into. And we want to make sure the right fit for you and your goals down the line. Another important thing when you're dealing with a 401k rollover is a lot of companies want to make sure that the product you're going into is the right fit. So not only do you want to make sure that you're the right fit, or that company is the right fit for you, but a lot of these companies also do their homework on you to ensure that you're the right fit for them. So just like with life insurance, you have your health that's considered, it's all risk-based. So they look at your health and see what kind of position you're in health-wise to see if they want to assume that risk on your life. Well, in a lot of the companies we deal with rollover products, they look at what's called suitability. So they just want to make sure that you're getting the right fit for what your need is down the line. Now, as far as the actual process goes, what we look at is where is the money? What company is it with? And you would be very surprised how many of these companies could be a shell company where your company could be at product A, but then product A is actually managing the money for company B, and company B has actually done the rollover process at some point from one plan to another, and the money is actually in company C. So there's a lot of layers and depth when it comes to where is the funds and how do you move funds from one company to another. So initially, what we do is we identify your need, right? What's your goal for the money? Step two is to immediately apply for the rollover with whatever company we're going to roll that money into. So we fill out an application. It's a very simple process. We gather information from you, monthly expenses, how much you have in equity in your home, what kind of net worth you have, what assets do you have that are liquid, that are non-liquid. Do you have any other investment accounts or stocks anywhere else? We gather a lot of information from you. We apply, so we fill out the application for whatever that product is that we're going to roll the funds into. And while that's happening, one of the most important steps is to turn around and call whatever your 401k plan provider is. That way we can actually have them pull the funds out of the investment that it's involved in so that you don't lose any money while you're going through the process. So once you've decided to roll the money over into an IRA of some kind, it's very important at that time that you stop any kind of investment and trading on your funds, because if the market was to tank during the process, then you're going to lose a good portion of your retirement. So our goal at Financial Thirst is always to keep you safe and make sure that whatever we're doing the proper management of the transaction and helping you with the process. And we don't want you to lose any money. So we call that company and we say, hey, we're going to be rolling this money over to another company. Can you pull the funds and get them ready for transfer? And that's an important step because, again, we don't want you to lose any money during the process. And then with that company, we actually engage. We know the proper questions to ask, which is difficult, especially if you're going to be trying to do it on your own. We want to make sure that they're receiving the right paperwork the first time so that it doesn't hold up the process. We've had both me and Ron have had 401k rollovers that have taken 6 months because the company is just, they've got a little more detailed process for moving the funds versus a company that is just going to roll it over, that you log into your account, you enter in where you want the money to go, and the money gets sent in 2 or 3 days. So the process is different for every single company. Ultimately, once the receiving company that we're rolling the money into decides, hey, we're going to accept the funds, then they're going to send over a transfer form with the letter of acceptance. And that's why it's important that we know the process of how the 401k plan administrator, wherever the funds are now, we need to know the process in which are they going to want a wet signature, meaning that you physically signed a paper with an ink pen? Will they accept an electronic signature? Does the transfer paperwork have to be notarized? Will they accept the receiving company's transfer paperwork, or do they need you to send a copy of their paperwork in? So there's a lot of details and small intricacies that company is going to require. So it's pretty in depth. So having somebody that can hold your hand and walk you through the rollover process is very, very important. At Financial Thirst, what we deal with mainly are safe products. We don't do any variable products. Again, if you're in a 401k, you've been in a variable product. That product can go up, it can go down. You can win big, you can lose big. So we want to make sure once you decide that you're rolling the 401k over, that we're rolling it into a safe place where there's zero risk and you can still get growth and participate in the market. And then it's also important to know down the line, 1 year, 2 years, 3, 4, 5 years from now, that the individual who's helping you with the rollover is still going to be paying attention to your account. Because a lot of the products, if if it's not a variable IRA where it's actually involved in the gain and loss in the market, and it's a zero risk product, it's still attached to indexes that you're going to be gaining interest on. And you want to make sure, if we're in a down economy, that that individual is putting you into a fixed index for the next year or two, or you want to make sure, or they're putting you into a fixed account, or you want to make sure also that if the market is going up and doing great, that they've got you in a good index where your account is actually gaining interest and moving along. But it's important to know what the products that you're going to be moving the money into. Is there any fees associated with it? Is it a variable account? Is it a fixed account? Is there any risk involved? And there's a lot of details that we walk you through with the process of rolling over your money into its next place. So anything you want to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, just one thing that I think we we kind of overlooked a little bit was in terms of when this is being moved. So we had mentioned, losing a job or changing jobs, but there's also another opportunity, and it's called in-service distribution. So that in-service distribution means that you're still employed, you're still at the same employer, and that plan might have what's called an in-service distribution, meaning once you've reached the age of 59 and a half, if that plan has that in-service distribution available, you can actually move money out of that plan up to, usually about 75% is kind of the norm. You can move up to 75% of your funds past the age of 59 and a half and roll that into a potential safer environment. If you're trying to lock up the money, meaning, hey, I want to preserve what I've built. So we've had quite a few clients that have done this where they're saying, hey, I'm 59 and a half. This has this option within the plan. I'd like to take the money out, still contribute because I'm still working, but I don't want to lose what I've built. So they pull that money out, we preserve, we protect, we put that into an environment, into a product that gives that safety to where they know going forward that money is going to be there when they go to retire, and they're still contributing into that plan and still building that up, potentially if the markets are going up. But what they're afraid of is that they're a handful of years away from retirement, and they don't want that negative impact to take place in that next couple of years. And if it does, they want to protect that money. So I've had quite a few clients that do that in-service distribution. That's really something to think about. If you are employed, if you are getting close to that age, see if that in-service distribution is part of your plan. And that's something to definitely try to talk to someone about. And again, at Financial Thirst, we definitely do those kind of things all the time because people get skittish. They've seen it. People at that age, they've been down, they've been up and down on these roller coasters. They've been through some hard times in the markets, and they don't want that to occur right when they're about to retire. So it's something they're looking to take control of.
Yeah, and it's very important that you consider that, especially like Ron said, when you hit that 59 and a half, really look at where you are with your account, because you can be in a no risk environment, right? And this is a lot of people don't understand this, but you can actually, if that in-service distribution is available, then you can put yourself in an environment immediately where, the number one thing is you want to sleep easy at night. You want to make sure that you don't wake up in the morning and half of your money is gone. And one thing that people don't consider in these variable accounts, Ron has a chart that we can, show later, but if you got $100,000 and you lose 30%, well, that's $70,000. But if you gain 30%, you're not gaining 30% on the original 100. Now you're only gaining 30% on the 70,000, which is a lot lower than where you started when you took the 30% loss. So the way the market works with loss, losing 30% and then gaining 30% from the bottom is not the same growth. You're not making up the same amount. And a lot of us, we spend 20, 30 years putting this money back for retirement. So do you have an additional 20 or 30 years that you can make up the losses if a significant event did come around And even now we're toggling in the middle of a recession per se, and you've got a lot of people that don't feel it because we're, where we are in Ohio. Ron's in Northeast Ohio. I'm in Southwest Ohio, and we're not involved in a lot of tech companies here. This is a big blue collar environment where we've got a lot of manufacturing and other things going on, smaller factories and entrepreneurs own business versus out in California right now, where there's a lot of layoffs. Like people are losing their jobs left and right, being laid off. So, especially in an environment right now where we could possibly fall into a recession that we can all feel the impact of, we're maybe in a recession. Nobody really knows what's going on unless you look at the fine print of the everything that's going on in the economy right now. But you want to make sure that you're looking at your money and looking at your longevity of work and making sure you're making the right decision. So another thing, Ryan, can you touch on the idea of someone rolling into a variable account if they do decide to take that in-service distribution, or they do separate employment and retire, and they're going to roll that money into a variable product? Give them some of the risk with the variable if they did start drawing income, but they're in a variable product versus a safer product.
Yeah, you have what's called that sequence of risk return. I think that's what you're aiming towards there. When we're in a variable type of account to where you're in distribution phase, so you're in retirement, you're taking money for income to live off of. Simultaneously, the markets are going negative. So if you're in a variable type of account that you're pulling from and you pull the income and the markets simultaneously are going down, you're now taking more and more and more money away from yourself, meaning the potential for outliving your money becomes real. And I think that's where a lot of people start to get real nervous because there is longevity more and more these days. So that sequence of risk return to where you're simultaneously pulling money out and the markets are down. When that's happening, you might be taking $50,000 out, but you may have lost 20,000. So now you've taken 70 instead of the traditional 50 in that particular example. What's happening is you're depleting your funds more rapidly. So this what Will was kind of talking about, that variable aspect, you have the ups and downs of that variable going on. How long is that money sustained? How long can you live off that? Will it maintain the longevity that you may have? That's a real concern, is outliving your cash. So if you're in retirement and your money's still in a risk environment, that negative return sequence can be very, very impactful because it's like you're taking two distributions instead of one in 1 year, potentially, if the markets are really taking a beating. So this has happened. We're make a comment like this, but I'm not speaking out of context. I've seen it multiple times in my lifetime. And I'm not talking about a little blip here or a little blip there. There's always corrections that happen within the marketplace. It could just be a market correction. It could be an event that occurs in the world. We've seen that more than once. And like I said, in my lifetime, I've seen it more than once. So people that are older than I am, that are in retirement, have seen it multiple times in their lifetime. So to think that the markets are always positive is not true. We have to make sure we're paying attention to what we're doing, especially as we get closer to retirement and protecting our money.
For sure.